Hey there, welcome to week 5. And this week we're looking at the Complacency Card. And yes, this is the Korean deck, so I'll show you that in a minute. And the Complacency Card says, I am mourning the loss of my dreams. And one of the things that I want to say right up front is that doesn't necessarily mean your dream is over, nor does it mean that if you're reading for someone, their dream is over. It simply means that it can be a warning of a pattern where people in the family give up on their dreams. And there may be an idea that you need to look at, that you're giving up the loss of dreams that are not yours. So oftentimes when I see the Complacency Card, and this is the story of flow, that's the fable. It's actually the fable is called Crimson Dreams, and the key word is complacency, and the quote from the fable is, I am mourning the loss of my dreams. So if you look at that quote and then you read the fable, you're going to see that the quote does not necessarily come from the fable. It may be an energetic editorial. Now that's interesting because I really feel that those quotes came from the angels and the spirits that brought these fables forward. So when we look at that, that could be a spiritual editorial that becomes very important. So I'm not going anywhere, buddy. My oldie dog is sitting there. So, okay, so when we look at this, and one of the things I want to remind you of is that as we look at these cards, we already covered the first 3, and now we're on the 4th. And what is the 4th chakra? The 4th chakra, of course, is green, right? And so what opposes exposes. And we're now looking at red is in opposition, right, to green. So one of the things we're going to see here is that matters of the heart, they are going to occur when you see the Complacency Card. It can really come up as, am I being too complacent? Can I and will I take and reroute and reroute my dreams? Now, this is an interesting thing to look at also. You're looking at the color. I'm wearing the color actually of the fable. It worked out. And it's the color of crimson. Now, when we look at crimson, we're really looking at a red that has some brown in it. And that starts to become rooted in the earth. And I think it can be a little bit of a stuck energy. And you almost look at this as like somebody said, well, that looks like an aura around her. And one of the things that you want to look at also on the card is the idea that, somebody pointed this out, I didn't even see it, is the little torn lottery ticket, which is part of the fable. And I think that there is a larger soul that the body has shrunk away from. So when we look at complacency, this is really the story of having a dream and losing it. And what I say too is that, remember, that's not necessarily your story. It's not necessarily your client's story. To give you an example, I was doing a Chakra Wisdom Oracle training, and I was teaching people the cards. And part of it, when I do a training, I really like to have people set an intention at the beginning, because I believe all this is a personal journey, and we discover, discard. We uncover things about ourselves so that we can move forward into the next thing that we're looking to create. And most of it's peace anyway. We're looking for a sense of inner peace. So one of the things that she shared was she really wanted to open this coffee shop, and this was a dream. And I'm going to make the story a little shorter. Basically, what happened was she recognized that it wasn't her dream. It was an obligation. It was a feeling of a dream she had to carry on because of something her mother wanted. And she recognized she didn't really want to do it. And that's why it wasn't getting done. So sometimes when you look at the Complacency Card come up, you might want to think about the word procrastination. And I like to say that word in terms of, we procrastinate because we care, because it matters to us. We care that we don't want to do that. You know, a lot of times it's like, I remember somebody saying to me once, I really have to work on commitment. I said, okay, what does that mean? And she said, well, you know, I need to commit so I finish things. And I said, okay, so what kind of things are you looking to finish? She said, oh, all the things I hate to do. I was like, so wait a second, you want to commit to things you don't like? And she was like, well, now that you put it that way. So when we look at complacency, we can really look at the root chakra. Remember, it's what we're drawing from the earth, right? Because crimson is the crimson dreams. What are we drawing from our very DNA that may really not be our dream? And what do we need to see in this to free ourselves to pursue our own dreams? So in the fable, we see how Flo's daughter is carrying on the same tradition, or is she? So we get a chance to see breaking patterns. Now, something that's important here too is I want to remind you that there are 4 characters we know of. There's Flo, there's her, it's actually 5. There's Flo, there's her husband, there's her daughter's husband, and there is a lawyer, the legal advisor there. So one of the things you want to look at here is which part are you playing? And believe it or not, you can actually be playing the attorney in this. You can be the one looking at decisions people are making or giving them news of decision they have to make. So it may not be as cut and dry as you think when you're actually doing and reading and interpreting the fable. So that said, of course, we're going to read the fable. That's day 1. And a couple things I want to say is that, you know, sometimes we actually lose dreams because they're not our dream. And it may be that we were meant to be of service to someone else in that dream, and it is time to move on. You know, in the past when things have happened and they've been removed, it's sometimes challenging for me. But at the same time, I can look at it and go, you know, that was that person's dream and I was sacrificing for them, and that's good because they got what they needed, but I really don't miss what that was. So you want to really look at that, and that really is an important part of this message. Now, this is also a shadow card. Now, what do I mean by that? So it's a card, it's a fable about our shadow side. It may be parts of us that we don't want to see, or parts that we're trying to heal and withhold. Now remember, it's 4th chakra, right? Because there is that energy. It's the 4th card. Even though it's the 1st chakra cards, it is shades of the heart. So things that perhaps we are afraid of hurting our heart or hurting other people's heart and their true desires. So really looking at what's true for you becomes very important here. Now moving on to the first impressions, we want to look at how in here, and I'm not going to go into it because you're going to read it, but I am going to give you just a little bit here, which is we need to look at how energy is handed down, and the energy that we're kind of like in life, right? In our chakra energy, we are handed down energetic vibrations. So when we look at the 1st chakra in our DNA, because the 1st chakra is DNA, it's things we are sourcing our life from. So when I talk about where are you sourcing that from, that's what it means. So here, the source is an old energy. So it's very important to look when this card comes up, is that, am I doing what I want to do, or is there some kind of weird obligation here? And really look and deeply go. And especially because you've set an intention with this journey, you want to look at what that means for you. Now, couple things in here. When we talk about setting your intention for the week, this is really about getting clarity on your dream and what you really do want. And really kind of, there may be a moment of you going, oh my gosh, you know, I don't want to disappoint somebody. I don't want to disappoint, but you may have to. You may have to walk away from or do something differently than was done. And something else that's interesting is you may not recognize that you're doing the same thing because it looks different. So in the fable, look at how the same thing is being done because it looks different. And that may give you some insight into another way to look at this fable and this card. Now, remember to set your intention for the week. And part of that intention is looking at it, is this my dream or is this someone else's? And what is my heart into? What is my heart desire? So that becomes important because we want to look at the idea that crimson is also life force. So when we talk about the color here, we're talking about that life force energy. It's the color of blood, right? It is truly enriched blood that flows through you and is really pumping through that heart. And what energy are you sending into your heart? That color, and I would really encourage you to look at the color idea for Tuesday. Remember, each of these builds on the prior one. So when you look at it, and this is kind of like, you know, I really encourage you to take that time on Tuesday and allow yourself that time, particularly if this two things, if this particular fable really makes you angry or annoys you or brings up feelings, do every day. If you love this fable, do every day. And if you have no feelings about it, do every day. Try really to look at this as a way to discover some old, I want to say, obligations from particularly parental obligations. Now, one of the things I want to mention, and I'm not going to get into it too much here, but the idea of multi-generational healing also starts to occur in this particular chakra because it is what we're sourcing our roots from. And when we get to the sixth card, we'll talk about that because the sixth chakra is a lot about breaking those old ideas and seeing the hidden agreements. So we'll look at that just a little bit. Okay, so the idea here is in this particular moment, we are, you know, the question becomes, can you be honest with yourself? Are you willing to journal and get deeper and look at who you're really being? Looking at your neutral observer on Wednesday. And again, the group exercise, I have to tell you, and I'm going to say this every week, grab somebody and do the group exercise with them. Say, would you do this little activity with me? And you might hook them into working with you and playing with you, because I call these play shops, because it really is discovering someone fantastic, you. And that's the point of it. You know, my biggest goal is to make my job obsolete, because it really is about you and your experience. Because the truth of this is, you already have your answers. I'm here to validate what's inside of you and support you in reawakening those parts that you really do want to reawaken. So sometimes it's the parts that we're most afraid of that have the most gold and the most richness. So I really encourage you to read this fable and go through it. Then when we look at the idea of the meditation, I want to say that knowing something to be true and believing in something are two different things. You know, believing you can pass that test is very different than saying, I know I can pass that. You know, the reason of that is that beliefs are always against this energy. Knowing is always for uplifting positive energy. I want you to look at it this way. Remember what I said to you early on is that, do you believe that you're intuitive, or do you know you're intuitive? And if you know you're intuitive, probably why you're here, is to really uncover and awaken more of your intuition. So really looking at this fourth week through the lens of the fourth chakra. And remember that what opposes exposes. So in here, this is going to expose the truth of your heart versus the truth of someone else's heart in your family that perhaps you had some kind of symbiotic thing with, that was a false obligation. So it can be a false obligation. It can also be something wonderful that you want to complete with that person. So I'm just giving you some ideas. I want to hear what you have to say. Please post your thoughts below. I think it's going to be fantastic. Next week, we are going to jump into, like one of my favorite cards. We're going to look at this card. Oh, and I wanted to say, one of the things I do, and part of the reason, and this is the Korean deck, which I think is so cool. This is the Korean deck. And one of the things that I do when I'm playing with another language, I look at, and I'll put this deck with my deck, right, the English deck that I have, and I'll shuffle them. When I pull the Korean version, or if Spanish, whatever other language I'm working with, because I don't speak that language, I can often say, what is outside my frame of reference? What am I not seeing right now? What don't I understand? What does spirit need to translate for me to understand it? So sometimes using another language deck can give you a dimension in something. So think about that too when you're putting two decks together and playing with them. And I will see you next week. Please post your comments here on YouTube. Big part of that is because that's where I'm going to be interacting. That's where you'll find me. And I want to be able to give you my thoughts and insights. And I really want to hear your journey so far. Tell us your stories and all that fun stuff. I will see you next time. Remember that Elizabeth, my assistant, has put on here a link to some of the other pages, to another page that will show you the different things that I teach, so you can get to know some of that work as well if you're interested. And I am so excited about this journey with you. I can't wait till next week. All right, see you.